You might be interested in switching from violin to viola, or maybe you just want to be able to switch back and forth between the two instruments. There's a lot of reasons why a person might want to play the violin and the viola, or they might want to switch from the violin to the viola on a more permanent basis. Well, today I'm going to show you some easy tricks to make the transition way easier. So let's get to it. Now there's a lot of differences between the violin and the viola, and there's a lot of things to consider when switching back and forth between the two instruments. But today I'm just going to focus on two primary things. Now if you want a more complete exhaustive analysis of the differences between violin and viola, check out my video that I did before. I put the link in the description. Yes, the audio is not very good. It's an older video, but but the content is there. Okay, so first of all, the viola is bigger, right? So this is a normal size violin, it's a full size violin. It's got a 14-inch body. This is a very small viola, but it's still bigger than the violin. This is a 15-inch viola. And not only are the bodies bigger, but the body on the viola is thicker as well. Okay, but what that means for you when you're switching back and forth is that the distances in your left hand are going to be a little bit bigger on the viola. And so that's going to make it a little bit uncomfortable, and it's going to make it so you might have a tendency to play your fourth finger in particular flat. It's harder to reach. So you'll want to do a couple things to make sure that it's easier and you avoid injury. Okay, so the first thing that I recommend is when you get your viola, make sure that you warm up perhaps more than you usually would with your violin. You'll have to warm up more because the instrument is physically more difficult to play, so it's more important to get even more warmed up to avoid injury. And you'll want to make sure that you warm up with something that's also beneficial, like scales. So I highly recommend that you not only spend more time warming up with the viola, but you warm up with scales, because the scale will warm up your hand very well. Make sure you use fourth finger. The scale will warm up your hand really well, but it also will teach you the proper distances on the instrument. So you'll get acclimated to the larger distances in your hand pretty quickly. Now, the other thing to consider was when switching back and forth between violin and viola is that the clef is different on the viola. So the clef of the music that you're reading, right? So violin is normally in treble clef and viola mostly reads alto clef, okay? So there's three little differences, and there's some little tricks that I can show you that'll actually make it easier for you to start reading alto clef pretty quick. Okay, so for example, let's say you really want to know the letter name of a note that you're playing on the music. So you look at viola music and you're like, wow, what's the letter name of that, right? You can read treble clef, but you don't know what the letter name is in alto clef. One simple trick is that whatever the letter name would normally be in treble clef is going to be a whole step higher in alto clef. So for example, take this note, which is normally an F natural on violin, right? Now just go up a whole step, G natural. That's what it is on the viola. So that'll work with any note, whether it's A or B or C. So if it's A on treble, it's B in alto. If it's C in treble, it's D in alto. So it's that easy. Okay, so the second thing to notice, as far as similarities between reading the clefs, is that if you're reading the music on violin and there's a note that's on a line, right, on the staff, it can either be on a line or it can be on a space, right? So if it's on a line and you're playing the note in first or third position, you're going to use first or third finger. Now it's the same thing on the viola, it's just reversed. So in our previous example, we had an F natural on the violin and it's played with first finger on the E string. Well, on the viola, it's a third finger. It's just reversed, right? So the same thing is true with the notes that are on spaces. So if you're in first or third position on the violin and you see a note on a space, you're going to play it with open 2 or 4. It's exactly the same with viola. It'll just be reversed. So if you play a second finger on the violin, more than likely it's going to be played with the fourth or open finger on the viola. Okay, but the last thing that I want to show you though, which is probably the most important and easiest way to teach yourself to read alto clef, is this. Take any book that you've perhaps used while learning the violin, right? There's a lot of different methodology books that are out there. One of the most common ones is the Suzuki book series. So I'm going to use that for my example, but you can use Essential Elements or some other book for this example as well. Okay, so the beauty of the Suzuki books, for example, is that most of the books in violin and viola are parallel, meaning they use the same pieces from book 1 to book 4. There are some differences here and there, but for the most part, the pieces are all the same. So, for example, let's say you took Suzuki Book 2 for violin. The first song in there, I believe, if it still is a chorus from Judas Maccabeus, right? So you already know how to play. For example, let's say you've gone through all the Suzuki books. You could be an advanced player. It doesn't matter. You can use this trick to train your mind. Okay, so the piece starts on the 3rd finger on the 2nd to highest string, right? And it sounds like this. Okay, really easy, and you already know the piece, let's say. Well, if you go over to the viola music, you play it on the viola exactly the same way. It starts on the 2nd to highest string, which is the D string, and on 3rd finger. Right? So what you're going to do is you're going to teach your brain to associate with what it's seeing with how you're playing. So it's very simple. You're just going to take a book that you already know. Let's say, for example, you already know Suzuki Book 1, 2, and 3, okay? So pick a book and just pick a song and just go through all the songs, but you're going to put the viola music in front of you. Even though you may have the songs memorized already, you're going to put the music in front of you and you're going to play them exactly the same way as you would on the violin, but you've got a viola underneath you. You can hear the viola, but more importantly, your mind is seeing those notes go by, those alto clef notes. And your mind will very quickly start to associate with what it sees with what it's hearing, right? And the reason is very simple. It's because of what we talked about before. If it's on a line, it's a 1 or a 3, right? If it's on a space, it's an open 2 or 4. So it's not a very big leap for your mind to just start associating that note on that line with 1st finger instead of 3rd finger, or 3rd finger instead of 1st finger, or A string instead of D string, right? I've used this trick with many of my students, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can learn how to read alto music by simply putting music in front of you that you already know how to play on the violin, but it's written in alto clef. So guys, I hope that I've helped a little bit. I've answered some questions, and there's always a lot of questions with these kinds of videos, so just let me know. Just put them in the comment section below. I'd be happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. And of course, on social media, you can DM me or put a comment or whatever, and I respond to pretty much all of them. And don't forget, ask me a lot of questions, because the videos that I do these days are all a result of the questions that you guys ask me. So with that, we'll wrap up another video and look forward to a great week. And don't forget, happy practicing.